Picture a basement in Hawkins, Indiana. November 1983. The table is set for a campaign that never happens. There is no dungeon master. There is no Demogorgon figurine slammed onto the table. It is just empty. Silent. And because that room is silent, the rest of the world is about to scream. We like to think of the kids in Stranger Things as the heart of the show, the emotional core, the nostalgia engine. But if you look at the tactical reality of the situation, they weren't just kids. They were an unsanctioned, highly effective intelligence cell. They were the only ones spotting patterns in the static. Remove them from the equation, and you don't just lose the charm. You lose the early warning system for a dimension-spanning biological invasion. Without Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will, the Upside Down isn't a spooky adventure. It is a chronic, festering wound that infects the global ecosystem. Today, we are running the simulation. We are stripping away the plot armor, removing the bicycle cavalry, and looking at the hard, cold facts of how a unchecked dimensional breach turns the 1980s into a survival horror scenario. I'm Tom, and this is Survival Curriculum. Usually, we talk about grid-down scenarios or historical disasters. Today, we are applying that same analytical lens to fiction, treating the law of Hawkins as a case study in containment failure. We are going to walk through the timeline, year by year, seeing exactly where the institutions failed and where the monsters won. We will look at the military response, the biological spread, and the geopolitical fallout of a hole in reality that just won't close. Before we open that gate, I need you to secure your spot in this briefing. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The algorithm hides this kind of content because it scares people, but you need to know how fragile the system really is. Do it now. Okay, let's look at the first domino. It falls on November 6th, 1983. In our timeline, Will Byers vanishes, and his friends immediately mobilize. In this timeline, Will Byers vanishes, and the system does exactly what it was designed to do. It files a report, it searches the woods, and then, inevitably, it gives up. This is where the silence begins. Let's start with the disappearance. Without the party, Will's abduction is a tragedy, not a mystery. Chief Hopper is still competent, sure, but he's also broken. Without the relentless pressure from a group of screaming middle schoolers, Hopper treats this as a standard missing child case. He checks the ex-husband. He searches the quarry. But he doesn't check the magnetic fields. He doesn't listen to the lights. Why would he? Those are the theories of desperate people, and without the kids reinforcing Joyce's paranoia, Joyce just looks like a grieving mother losing her grip on reality. The terrifying part is that the Hawkins lab cover-up works perfectly. When they plant that fake body in the quarry, there is no one to challenge the autopsy. There is no science teacher checking the composition of the chest cavity. The coroner signs the paper, the town holds a funeral. Will Byers is buried, or at least a mannequin filled with cotton is buried. And the real Will? He dies alone in the Upside Down. No rescue mission, no CPR in the ashes. He becomes the first confirmed long-term casualty. But his death isn't the worst part. The worst part is that because the case is solved, the town goes back to sleep. The gate in the lab stays open, pulsing, widening, completely unmonitored by anyone outside the government payroll. This silence has a body count. Consider Barbara Holland. In the show, her disappearance was a huge red flag for Nancy. But without the context of the Demogorgon provided by the younger kids, Barb is just another runaway. Teenagers run away all the time, right? That's the police line. That's the narrative. Without the Dungeons and Dragons metaphor, without the concept of the Demogorgon, the people of Hawkins lack the vocabulary to understand what is hunting them. They are fighting an enemy they can't name. Attacks are written off as wild animal strikes, bears, coyotes. The state police come in, set some bear traps, and leave. Meanwhile, the creature is learning. It's feeding. It realises that this hunting ground is soft. There are no psychic backlash events, no kids with wrist rockets, no meddling teenagers burning it with gasoline. The predator gets confident. And a confident apex predator in a suburban environment is a nightmare scenario. We move from a hidden threat to a series of closed casket funerals that the local paper refuses to link together. The pattern is there, but nobody is looking at the board. Now, let's talk about the nuclear option. 11. In the canon timeline, she escapes, meets the boys, and learns what it means to be a person. She learns friendship, loyalty, and love. Those emotions are what fuel her powers. They are what give her the strength to close the gate. But in this timeline, she never meets Mike. Maybe she escapes the lab, but dies of exposure in the woods. Or, more likely, she never escapes at all. Dr. Brenner, Papa, runs a tight ship. Without the chaotic element of the kids interfering, he keeps her locked down. She remains number 11. She doesn't become L. This is a critical distinction. To the lab, she is a tool for espionage against the Soviets. They keep pushing her into the void to spy on Russian High Command. They don't care about the monsters in the dark. They care about the Cold War. She is treated like a piece of high-end military hardware. But hardware doesn't have loyalty. Hardware breaks. Here is the dark reality of a weaponized 11. Without the emotional anchor of the boys, she has no reason to protect Hawkins. She has no reason to protect our dimension. In fact, her trauma might make her volatile. If she stays under Brenner's control, the gate doesn't just stay open, it gets exploited. The lab likely tries to send teams through. We know from Season 4 that Henry Creel, or 1, is waiting on the other side. If 11 is just a scared, abused lab rat, she is susceptible to 1's manipulation. Instead of fighting the Mind Flayer, she might inadvertently strengthen the connection. Imagine an 11 who isn't a superhero, but a conduit, a battery that the Mind Flayer can drain to widen the breach. Or worse, the lab pushes her too far, she snaps, and creates a massive psychic rupture that makes the original gate look like a crack in the sidewalk. We are talking about a catastrophic failure of containment, caused by the very people trying to control it. The military tries to weaponize the supernatural, and the supernatural weaponizes their hubris. So the gate is open. The guard dog, 11, is leashed or broken. What happens to the environment? In the show, the corruption, the vines, the spores, the rot, was mostly contained to the lab and the tunnels. But that's because the gate was frequently closed or cauterized by the kids' interventions. Remove those interventions, and Hawkins becomes a biological ground zero. It starts with the crops. We saw the pumpkins rotting in Season 2. That wasn't a fluke, that was terraforming. The Upside Down is a viral ecosystem. It wants to overwrite our reality. Without the kids burning the tunnels, that root system expands unchecked. It hits the water table. It hits the sewage lines. You start seeing toxic events reported in the news. People in Hawkins getting sick with respiratory issues, spore lung. The EPA shows up, assumes it's a chemical leak from the lab, and sets up a perimeter. But you can't scrub this pollution away. It grows back overnight. The physical infrastructure follows the biological decay. Those tunnels we saw the kids exploring? They undermine the foundations of the town. Roads start buckling, sinkholes swallow cars, power lines snap as the vines choke the transformers. To the outside world, Hawkins looks like it's suffering from a geological anomaly or a massive subterranean mine collapse. The government evacuates neighbourhoods, calling it subsidence. But anyone who stays behind hears the skittering in the walls. The local ecosystem changes. The birds leave. The dogs won't stop barking until they go quiet. We are seeing the conversion of an American town into a xeno environment. It's like an invasive species, like kudzu, but predatory and intelligent. By 1985, Hawkins isn't a town anymore, it's a fortress for the hive mind. The library, the school, the mall, they become incubators. And because nobody knows the rules, because nobody has the D&D manual to explain the hive mind, the scientists studying it make fatal mistakes. They treat it like a fungus. They don't realise that when you burn a vine on Main Street, a monster on Maple Street knows you did it and is coming for you. This brings us to the strategic mismatch. The humans are playing checkers. The Mind Flayer is playing 4D chess. The single biggest contribution the kids made was identifying the hive mind. They understood that the army of monsters was actually a single organism. Without that insight, the military and the scientists are fighting individual battles. They kill a demodog and think they've won a skirmish. They don't realise that the dead creature was just a sensory probe. The Mind Flayer is gathering intel. It learns our tactics. It learns that we use guns, that we use fire. And it adapts. It starts using stealth. It starts using possession. In the show, the kids figured out that Will was a spy. They figured out the sauna test to identify the possessed. Without them, there is no sauna test. There is no early detection. The Mind Flayer moves into the flayed phase much faster and much more quietly. Imagine the Billy Hargrove situation, but multiplied by 100. The Mind Flayer realises it doesn't need to send monsters through the gate to fight tanks. It just needs to possess the tank drivers. It takes over the town leadership. The mayor? Flayed. The police chief? Flayed. The lead scientist at the lab? Flayed. This is the invasion of the body snatchers scenario, but with a hive intelligence directing it. By the time the federal government realises Hawkins has gone dark, it's too late. The town is fully compromised. The residents aren't dead. They are walking biomass, ready to be melted down into a meat puppet avatar for the Mind Flayer. The horror here is the lack of resistance. There are no kids breaking the mind control with emotional memories or fireworks. There is just a silent, coordinated takeover. Hawkins becomes a colony. And from that colony, the flayed start driving. They drive to Indianapolis. They drive to Chicago. They carry the spores and the larva inside them. The infection vector isn't a monster running through the woods. It's a businessman on a commuter flight. Eventually, the signal gets out. Maybe a satellite picks up the thermal anomaly. Maybe a frantic radio transmission from a dying scientist reaches Washington. The US military responds. And they respond the only way they know how. Overwhelming firepower. We are talking National Guard, 101st Airborne, chemical weapons units. They cordon off the county. They establish a kill box. In a standard movie, this is where the humans turn the tide. But standard military doctrine fails against the upside down. You can airstrike the mall, sure. You can napalm the woods. But you can't bomb a parallel dimension. The gate is still open. The enemy can retreat into the upside down, wait out the bombardment, and pop up 5 miles behind the front lines. The military is fighting a guerrilla war against an enemy that can phase through walls. Morale collapses. Soldiers start hearing voices. They start hallucinating. The Mind Flayer uses psychological warfare, visions, trauma, fear, to break the chain of command. This leads to the containment zone era. Think Chernobyl, but aggressive. The military realises they can't win, so they try to wall it off. They build a massive perimeter around Hawkins. Concrete walls, automated turrets, constant flamethrower patrols. It becomes a permanent exclusion zone. Inside the zone, our reality has been overwritten. It's a dark, cold hellscape of ash and vines. Outside, life goes on, but it's terrified. The existence of monsters is no longer a secret. You can't hide a quarantine town and thousands of dead soldiers. The public knows. The Soviet Union knows. The narrative shifts from Cold War paranoia to existential dread. And here is the kicker. The containment is leaky. Spores drift on the wind. Tunnels dig under the walls. Every few months there is a breach. A pack of demo dogs hits a nearby farm. A trucker gets possessed at a rest stop. The US government is bleeding money and manpower just to keep the lid on a pot that is boiling over. It doesn't stay local. Remember, the Russians were trying to open their own gates. In the show, they needed to come to Hawkins because the barrier was thin there. But with the Hawkins gate left open and festering, the barrier between worlds weakens globally. The fabric of reality is stretching. The Soviets, seeing the chaos in America, don't stop their research. They accelerate it. They think, if the Americans have a monster army, we need one too. This is the darkest timeline of the Cold War. It's not an atomic race anymore, it's a dimensional race. Russia forces a gate open in Kamchatka. Maybe China tries one. The UK. Everyone wants a piece of the upside-down tech. They want the biological samples. They want the energy data. And every time a new gate opens, the Mind Flayer gains a new foothold. It's not just invading Indiana anymore. It's invading Siberia. It's invading unsuspecting research bunkers across the globe. The Hive mind connects them all. It now has a distributed network of entry points. This is where we approach the Great Filter event. Multiple gates mean multiple expansion zones. The global temperature drops slightly as ash from the upside down enters the upper atmosphere. Crops fail worldwide. The global economy enters a depression. International travel becomes restricted because nobody wants to import a possessed host. The geopolitical alliances shift. It's no longer East versus West. It's humanity versus the breach. But humans are bad at cooperating. Mutual distrust means they don't share data on how to kill the creatures. The US doesn't tell the Soviets that fire works best. The Soviets don't tell the US about the frequency vulnerabilities they found. We squabble while the enemy expands. We might see the use of tactical nuclear weapons, a desperation strike on Hawkins, a nuke on Kamchatka. Does it work? Probably not. The energy of the blast might just feed the gate, or the radiation creates mutated variants of the demogorgons. We burn our own house down trying to kill the termites. Let's zoom in on the average person. What is life like in 1989 in this timeline? You aren't watching MTV, you are watching civil defence broadcasts. The economy has shifted to a war footing. Construction companies are booming because everyone is reinforcing their basements. The price of heating oil skyrockets because the creatures hate heat, so people keep their homes like saunas. There are curfews. Lights out isn't just a suggestion, it's survival because light attracts the flyers. We see a resurgence of analogue tech. The digital age is stifled because the upside down interferes with electricity and radio waves. The internet never happens, or it remains a strictly military tool. We are stuck in a gritty, high-tech 80s dystopia. Consumerism dies. Survivalism goes mainstream. Your neighbour isn't buying a new lawnmower, he's buying a flamethrower and stockpiling canned goods. The prepper mindset we talk about on this channel? In this world, that is just called Tuesday. Culturally, society fractures. Without the scientific understanding that the kids and their teachers provided, people turn to superstition. Religious fundamentalism explodes. People believe this is the literal Christian hell rising up. Doomsday cults form, worshipping the Mind Flayer as a cleansing god. They actively try to sabotage containment efforts, believing they are helping bring about the rapture. On the flip side, you have extreme xenophobia and paranoia. Anyone acting strange is suspected of being flayed. Lynch mobs become common. The social trust evaporates. If your brother starts acting distant, you don't ask if he's okay. You lock him in a room and turn up the heat to see if he screams. It is a witch hunt society armed with assault rifles. The arts turn dark. Movies are nihilistic. Music becomes aggressive and industrial. The optimism of the 80s, 90s never happens. We enter a dark age of the human soul, driven by the constant low-level hum of anxiety that the walls of reality are paper thin. So, does humanity go extinct? I don't think so. Humans are like cockroaches. We are incredibly hard to kill off completely. We adapt, we learn. Eventually, even without the kids, the military scientists would crack the code. They would figure out the hive-mind connection. They would develop herbicides that target the vines. We would reach a stalemate. The world becomes a patchwork quilt. You have the safe zones, fortified cities with UV light domes and perimeter walls. And you have the wildlands, vast stretches of territory reclaimed by the Upside Down, where the ecosystem has fully converted. It becomes a frontier planet. Special forces teams may be led by a hardened, cynical Steve Harrington who survived by pure luck, run incursions into the wildlands to salvage resources or burn nests. It's a permanent state of war. The Upside Down becomes part of the geography of Earth. You learn to live with it. You check the spore forecast before you go to work. But there is a weirder outcome. Evolution. If you can't beat it, join it. We might see humanity attempting to hybridize. We saw 11 use the void. Maybe the government starts breeding psychic children on purpose, mass-producing 11s not as spies, but as biological necessities to navigate the new world. We might start using upside-down biotech, organic computers grown from the vines, armor harvested from Demogorgon chitin. Humanity survives by becoming something else, something harder, something colder. We lose our innocence, permanently. The Stranger Things world we know is about the triumph of the human spirit, about friendship conquering fear. This world? This world is about the triumph of the will. It is a grim, militaristic survival story. The kids saved us from this future not by firing guns, but by keeping the humanity in the equation. By saving 11, they saved the moral compass of the superpower. Without them, the compass spins wildly, and we all get lost in the dark. To recap, removing the party from Hawkins doesn't just change the plot, it changes the genre. It shifts from a coming-of-age adventure to a global disaster documentary. We lose the early detection. We lose the tactical intelligence of the hive mind. We lose the emotional anchor that controls the nuclear weapon that is 11. The result is a slower, more painful slide into a dimensional merger. Hawkins falls, the military fails, the infection spreads, the world changes colour from the bright neons of the 80s to the dark blues and greys of the Upside Down. It serves as a reminder that in any crisis, the most valuable asset isn't the guy with the gun. It's the person who notices the pattern. It's the person who asks the right question. It's the person who refuses to leave their friend behind. That is the timeline. Bleak, gritty, and plausible based on the mechanics of that universe. I want to know your take. Would the military have nuked Hawkins sooner? Would the Soviets have won the dimensional race? Leave your intel in the comments. I read them all. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into disaster simulation, make sure you are subscribed. We break down the worst case scenarios so you don't have to live them. Check the description for links to the survival gear we mentioned in the analogy. Gas masks might be useful even without a Demogorgon. Until next time, keep your eyes open, watch the lights, and don't go into the basement alone. This is Tom, signing off.